Hello, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm very happy to be reaching you from Ejumako this afternoon. We know you are all social distancing, so this lecture is going to be labeled Social Distancing Edition of Ejumako Lectures. We want to use your Facebook and WhatsApp handles as an extension of our lecture halls so that the fact that you are home will not mean learning, teaching and learning will not go on. We know that all of you are on social media one way or the other. For that matter, we are very sure that in order to continue teaching, we can use social media very effectively to do that. So this video is our first attempt at continuing our lectures from Ejumako while you enjoy the lecture from wherever you are. We hope you enjoy it. Thank you very much. Today, what we shall discuss is suprasegmentals. But before we touch on suprasegmentals, we want to quickly go through what we discussed as far as complex articulations are concerned. In complex articulations, we said that complex articulated sounds are sounds that are produced with multiple places of articulation or multiple manners of articulation. So if you have a sound that is produced with more than one place of articulation or more than one manner of articulation, then you are referring to complex articulations. In complex articulation, we have two main types: co-articulation or double articulation, and then we have secondary articulation. And co-articulation, we said, is mainly sounds that are produced with two different places of articulation simultaneously. So we saw an example like B and B, sounds that are in Dangbe, Ewe, Ga, and some northern languages. Dagbani, yeah. Even the name of the language, Dagbani, has a co-articulated sound in it, that is B. And then the second type of complex articulations is secondary articulations. And if you remember, we spent some time with secondary articulation. And then we said that to discuss secondary articulation, we must also remember that we have what we call primary articulations. So secondary articulations are sounds that are produced with minor closures superimposed on the primary closure. So if you have a sound that is produced and in that production you have a minor closure, the minor closure is what we are referring to as the secondary articulation gesture. So that secondary articulation gesture is usually superimposed on the primary articulation. So a typical example we saw in the name Kwesi, like the name of Mr. Kwesi Adumako of Akanisma Department. Kwesi, the K in his name is not the ordinary primary K that you would find in Ka or Ka, Ka or Ka, but in Kwesi, the K is rather Ko. There is a lip rounding added to the primary closure. Well, what we mean by primary closure is all the features that are necessary basically to produce K in its basic form. We have different types of secondary articulation. So we discuss nasalization, we discuss labialization, we discussed palatalization, we discussed velarization, we also discussed pharyngalization, and I asked you to go and read on glottalization. And all these izations, we said whatever precedes the morphinization should tell you that that is the minor closure that is added to the primary closure. For example, nasalization means there is the lowering of the velum in addition to the basic production of vowel sounds. So the nasal feature is the secondary articulation feature in nasalized vowels. So we can now move on to our topic of the day, suprasegmentals. One would ask, what is suprasegmental? To understand suprasegmentals, we need to understand what segments are. Or you need to understand segmentals. And when we talk about segments, we are talking about individual sounds, more, if you like, individual discrete sounds that you can pick one by one from any utterance. For example, if you have a word or a syllable, the syllable is made up with sounds, and the sounds that you can pick one by one from any particular syllable or any particular word, they are the segments. So breaking the word into smaller parts will mean you are actually going in for the individual segments that make up the sound, the word, sorry. So segments are phonemes, if you like, phonemes that come together to make a word up. So they are constituents of words. Now this, for example, if you have aka, you can say that there are three segments in such a word. I don't know what word it is, so don't bother yourself trying to understand. I'm just making the word up. If it sounds like something in your language, fine. Aka is made up of three different segments. There is a, and there is k, and there is another a, making up the word aka. So there are three segments in such a word. In addition to these constituents of words that we call discrete segments, there are other features of spoken language which are not necessarily identified as discrete segments. These features are also present, and they sometimes go together with longer utterances. They do not match with individual segments, but they are present on the combination of segments that we have. For example, if you have a syllable, the syllable may have another sound feature which you cannot identify as a phoneme or as a discrete sound. So when you are separating the segments in the word, you may not necessarily identify what we are calling the suprasegmental features. The suprasegmental features are sometimes referred to as non-segmental features or prosodic features. So these prosodic features, you can only identify them on the basic segments that are making up the word. So principally, these suprasegmental features come out as stress, pitch, duration, and sometimes loudness, tone, intonation. Those are some examples of suprasegmental features. For example, if you have pa, The per are the segments. Per a, 2 segments, another per a. So you have 4 segments there. But sometimes meaning comes from adding some other sound nuances to these segments. For example, in Akan, in Twi most especially, if you have papa versus papa, the segments are the same in these 2 words, but you have completely 2 different words with 2 different meanings. Papa, papa. But if we want you to identify the segments that come together to make these 2 words, you will be identifying the same or maybe similar segments. But then you will still agree that the 2 words are different in meaning. The cause of the variation in meaning between the 2 words is as a result of the suprasegmentals that is operating on the 2 words. We are going to look at them one by one from this point on. So in our discussion, the suprasegmental features that we'll look at are stress, duration or length, tone, intonation. Mr. Dumako is saying we should add pitch, and so pitch is going to come before tone and intonation, because they have some pitch has some relevance to tone and intonation. Let us look at stress. Stress is the variation in the amount of energy used in making a word. So whenever we talk, we do not use the same amount of energy throughout our utterances. So as we are speaking, the energy that we exert on the production of portions of the words that we produce vary. Some portions of the word take more energy, while other portions of the word take less energy. Whenever a syllable is produced with a relatively greater amount of energy, we say that such a syllable is stressed. And the opposite is true for unstressed syllables. Let me take it again. Whenever a syllable is produced with a relatively greater amount of energy, we say that such a syllable is stressed. Stressed syllables are usually produced by pushing more air out of our lungs. We need to note that the greater the energy expended on a syllable, the more prominent the syllable becomes. What this means is, as you push in more air for a particular syllable, that syllable becomes more audible in your speech process than other syllables. So you are giving such a syllable more prominence in your speech process. It is therefore said that stressed syllables are those syllables that are pronounced with more prominence than all the other syllables in a word. So the so-called prominence often translates into loudness. Hence, stressed syllables are louder than unstressed syllables. Stress patterns vary from language to language. So languages that use stress do not use the same stress patterns. In some languages, such as French, the final syllable is usually stressed. In other languages like Czech and Swahili, it is the second to the last syllable. The second to the last syllable is known as the penultimate syllable. So in Swahili, the second to last syllable is always stressed. In French, always the last syllable is stressed. However, in languages such as English and Russian, you need to learn the stress pattern of every individual word. So you learn the language, you learn the word, the pronunciation, together with the stress pattern of the word. So it is not automatic and it's not easy like in languages that we had earlier on. Probably the most important function of stress in English is to indicate syntactic relationships between words or part of words. So in English, even though we may not say that stress is phonemic, in other words, it does not really differentiate meaning, contrast meaning. It shows syntactic relationship between different words. Let us consider the phrase. I would want Mr. Dumako. Mr. Dumako is here with me. This is a teamwork coming from all the lecturers who are teaching phonetics and phonology. You'll be hearing other voices as the weeks progress. But this afternoon, I would like Mr. Adumako to give us the pairs of words once again.
So the first pair is an insult versus to insult. Second, an overflow versus to overflow. Third, an increase versus to increase. An import to import. An export to export. A conduct to conduct. A convict to convict.
Thank you very much, Mr. Domako. So what is important here is for us to note from the screen that the stress syllable is different in the pairs of words that we have. In the first column, the first syllables are stressed, and in the second column, it is the second syllable that is stressed. The words in the first column are all nouns, while the words in the second column are all verbs. In this case, the stress pattern indicates the syntactic function of the word. Where you have the stress in the first syllable, the syntactic function is where a noun functions in the sentence. So the word could be a subject or an object, for example. But when the stress moves on to the second syllable, the word becomes a verb. The word functions as a verb. That is what we mean by the syntactic relationship as determined by the stress. Stress is marked by placing a raised, is it a stroke or a stick? So that is what you see on the screen. That is the diacritic, which is used to mark stress syllables. Whenever that symbol, that diacritic, is placed before any symbol, it means that symbol is stressed. I hope that is clear. We have types of stress, Mr. Domako. We have types of stress, right? We have what is called primary stress. We have a secondary stress and unstressed. What about tertiary stress? I think I saw tertiary stress before. Is it important we discuss primary versus secondary stress? Okay, so Mr. Dumago, what can you tell us about primary stress?
As the earlier explanation went, the primary stress is relative. If you have three syllables, the most, the part or the syllable, I mean three-syllable word, the part that requires greater energy is what we call the primary stress. So the secondary stress is relatively has a lower amount of energy or requires a lower amount of energy, whilst unstressed syllable is the one that doesn't require much energy. So it's relative. Before you can say this is a primary, this is secondary, the two have to be there so that you know this is higher, requires higher energy to pronounce than the other one. So that is.
So what if you have a own? We shall move into our second type of suprasegmental features, and this is duration. Duration is also known as length. Every speech sound has its own inherent length or duration. Every speech sound has its own inherent length. What we mean by this is that every sound, every individual speech sound has its own inherent period of time, space of time that is required to produce that sound. So the time that is required to produce any particular sound is what we refer to as the duration of that particular sound. So every sound has its own inherent duration. It is this individual microseconds of time that we use to produce individual sounds, and as we add the sounds to one another to produce words and longer utterances, that is what takes us minutes, sometimes tens of minutes and hours to talk. So as you are talking and time is moving, you must know that it is because every single sound you produce in your words takes some space in time. Speech sounds vary from one another in terms of their durations. This means that it is no two sounds are the same in terms of duration. In other words, what time is required to produce a, for example, may be more than the time that is required to produce e, for example. Some sounds are inherently longer than others, as you can see from the examples I gave. High vowels are shorter than low vowels. Voiceless consonants are longer than voiced consonants. And in fact, high vowels are shorter than low vowels because the amount of time that is required to open the jaw, the two jaws, the upper jaw and the lower jaw, to hit the target that is necessary for the production of lower or low vowels is more than the amount of time that is required to open the jaws to produce high vowels. Remember, we said high vowels are also known as closed vowels. It means the opening of the jaw is minimal in high vowels, while the opening of the jaw is longer or more in low vowels, and this translates into the time that is taken to produce them. Now, we also heard that voiceless consonants are longer than voiced consonants. It has also been established that while voiceless fricatives are longer than all other consonants, the s and f, and f tend to be longer than all other voiceless fricatives. So what we are saying here is that when you consider all consonants, voiceless consonants are longer than voice consonant. Then when you consider only voiceless consonants, fricatives are longer than non-fricatives. But even if you consider voiceless fricatives, the sibilants and f tend to be longer than other voiceless fricatives. And you can see this information in Akpanglo Nate 2002. Now, the inherent length of the individual sounds may be maintained in speech, or they may be extended beyond the normal duration. What it means that as we talk, we don't always produce the sounds with their inherent durations. Sometimes we, if you like, elongate the production of individual sounds, which we refer to as lengthening. In some languages such as Korean, Finnish, Italian, and Arabic, making a sound longer than its inherent duration can result in meaning change. Therefore, in simple terms, we can say that length or lengthening or duration is phonemic in some languages, such as the languages we can see on the screen right now. Let us look at these words from Finnish. We have muta, muta, muta. The second word is muta, muta, muta. The third word is muta, muta, muta. Now we have three different words here, but if you look at the individual segments, you'll see that the three words are the same in terms of the segments. But when we come to duration, the first word, all the segments are produced with their inherent durations. If you come to the second word, the first syllable, the vowel in the first syllable is produced longer than its inherent duration. When you come to the third word, the vowel in the second syllable, which is a, is produced longer than its inherent duration. And by lengthening the u in the second word, we have some order. That is the meaning, some order. By producing all the sounds with their inherent durations, we have mad, mad. But the final word, muta, is but, but. So we have three different words with three different meanings, simply because we produce some segments longer than their original duration. This is what we mean by duration being phonemic in those languages. In this language, we can say that length is phonemic because it can cause meaning change. Whenever the duration of a sound is lengthened such that it can be considered twice its normal length, it is called geminate. So if you go back to look at muta, the u there is a geminate, because we can say, if you analyze it, you see that the u is produced as if there are two u's in that syllable. So we are saying when you lengthen a particular sound such that you can analyze it into two of its kind, then it's a geminate. So the process of lengthening sounds like that will be called gemination. These words are from Italy, Italian, and they are taken from Akpablo Nate 2002, where you have echo as echo. Then you have echo, which means here. Then you have fola, which means last or heat. Then you have fola, fola. which means crowd. You have nono, nono, which means knife. Then you have non no, meaning grandfather. The most interesting is papa, papa. That is the pope, papa. Then you have papa, papa. That is baby food. So in Italian, if you are going to refer to the pope, and instead of saying papa, you lengthen the p, the second p, such that it's a bit longer, you would have been referring to the pope as a baby food. Or if you are going to refer to baby food, which is you are supposed to produce with the second p longer, but you end up producing the second p as the ordinary p, you would have been calling a baby food the pope. That is what happens in those languages. It's funny, isn't it? Very funny. In English, geminates usually occur when a word ending in one sound is followed by another sound, another word beginning in a similar sound. When you have two words following each other back to back, and the final sound of the first word is the same as the initial sound of the following word, then there will be a geminate over there. I hope my explanation is clear enough. Mr. Domako, does that make sense?
Yes, I think it's clear. I think it makes sense. Yes. So English, as he has just explained, in the context of two words, one ending in a particular sound and another the same sound beginning the following word, then in the middle you have a sequence of these two sounds, and that forms geminates he's talking about. So I think we'll go through the examples then.
Okay, can you quickly run through the examples for us, please?
Yeah. So the first example, as we said, is bookcase. Bookcase. In rapid speech, we say bookcase. And the second one is front tie. Front tie. Third one is bad day. Bad day. The last one is nice stew. Nice stew. So going back to the first one, we can see in book, the last sound is k. Whereas in the word case, the first sound is k. So the two k which ends in book and another one that begins case, the two forms geminates. Whereas in the second example, front ends in t, and at the same time tie also begins with t. So the two t sounds form a geminate. I think the third one, we'll make some small correction. Instead of d is b there. So please, it is d. So the first word ends in d, in bad, and then the second word begins with d, in day. So the geminates are the d, sequence of d. And let's not forget the fourth one is not orthography. We are talking about sounds. So nice ends in the sound s, whereas stew begins with the sound s. So when we transcribe in speech, we realize that the first word ends in s, whereas the second word begins in s. So the two sounds s and s form the geminates we are talking about.
Thank you very much, Mr. Domako. That is very, very clear. I don't need to go over anything you said there. The only thing I would like to add is that in indicating duration, we use the following diacritics. What we saw here in the exactly what we saw here, the two dots, so Mr. Domako says it's a column. the colon there is indicating lengthening of the sound that it follows. The sound that it follows, such that that sound can be called a geminate. So if you have the colon following any sound in a transcribed word, it means such a sound is to be analyzed as twice its length. But there are other times that you have only one dot coming after the sound. If it is only one dot that comes after the sound, it means that the sound is lengthened by half. So you may have a sound that is lengthened, not so that we can analyze it into two of its kind, but rather as 1.5 of its duration. And if you don't have any diacritic coming after the sound, it means the sounds are produced with their inherent durations. Now, another way of indicating lengthening is where you repeat the symbol of the sound in the transcription. So instead of the colon here, what we have from Italian, for example, echo, you can see k repeated. It means instead of the second k, we could have placed a colon there and it would have done the same work for us. So you can see all of them over there. With that, I believe we have enough discussions on duration, so we can quickly move onto pitch. Mr. Dumaku, what can you add as far as pitch is concerned?
Okay, so yes, as Mr. Podo has just said, the little I want to add is pitch. Maybe let me bring it down. When we say pitch, we are talking about the rate of vibration of our vocal folds when we are articulating speech sounds. So let's not mistaken it with voicing. Voicing, we say the two vocal folds vibrate when we produce a voiced sound, whereas in voicelessness, the two vocal folds are quite apart, so they don't cause the glottis to vibrate. Now we are talking about rate of vibration of the vocal folds. So when we are making speech sounds, its vocal folds vibrate, but the difference, as we get to know shortly, is how fast are the vocal folds vibrating. So the rate of vibration or the frequency of vibration of the vocal folds simply refers to what we call pitch. So sometimes the vocal folds vibrate at a higher rate, other times at a slower rate. So later, when the vocal folds vibrate at a faster rate, we will call it a high pitch. And when the folds are vibrating at a slower pace or rate, we will call it a low pitch. So that is as simple as that. When we are articulating a speech sound and our vocal folds are vibrating, the rate or the frequency of the vibration, the fastness or the slowness of the vibration of the vocal folds.
Thank you very much. That is why I love having you here. In practice, when a speech sound goes up, what Mr. Dumako is referring to as a high vibration, faster vibration of the vocal folds and the vocal cords, it also goes up in pitch. So it means the vibration and the pitch goes hand in hand. This explains the claim that pitch change depends on the rate of vibration of the vocal cords. The rate of vibration of the vocal cords, like Mr. Domako explained already. So I think that is very much understood. All things being equal, the rate of vibration of the vocal cords depends on their thickness or their thinness. Where the vocal cords are thicker, they vibrate slower than when they are thinner. So the thicker the vocal cords, the slower they vibrate, resulting in low pitch, and the thinner the vocal cords, the faster they vibrate, resulting in high pitch. And this partly accounts for the noticeable difference between male and female voices when it comes to pitch. Maybe in your own further reading, you get to understand this more and more. And we also expect that you come out of your readings, you come with questions which would need more clarifications on some of these things. You need to make sure you understand them. Speakers are capable of controlling the rate at which the vocal cords vibrate, resulting in pitch fluctuations or pitch variations. So it means, even though we are saying male may have thicker vocal cords, for that matter, naturally the vibration may be slower in male voices as compared to female. A female with a thinner vocal cords may control the the vibration, the rate of vibration, such that they can produce sounds with faster vocal cords vibration and slower vocal cords vibration, resulting in variations in pitch, as we are saying. The variation in pitch has both linguistic and paralinguistic implications. For example, when people are excited or angry, they speak with high pitch than when they are not. In English, for instance, when a statement ends in a low pitch, it means information is being given. But if the statement ends in a high pitch, it means information is being sought. So, can you give us an example in a statement, the same statement, where one will end in a low pitch and the other will end in a high pitch? We say when it ends in a high pitch, it means information is being sought. It's more like asking a question.
Okay, so let's give an example. Peter has gone. Peter has gone. And that will be demanding an answer. That is the question.
Yeah.
And I can say, Peter has gone.
Yeah.
Peter has gone. I'm giving an information that Peter has left here and is not here. So that is it.
Thank you very much. You can practice this at home, and you see the difference. What is important is in written English, or even in our languages, you may see a diacritic, a punctuation mark that indicates that this is a question. But in our ordinary speech, we don't add diacritics. So sometimes it is the pitch that will give you the information that this is a question or this is an information that is being given. So, like we said from the beginning concerning all suprasegmentals, we said suprasegmentals do not affect individual segments. Rather, they operate on patterns of segments, if you like, utterances. Pitch, for particularly, operates over whole syllables. So when we are, whether you vary the pitch, high pitch or low pitch, the pitch is operating on a whole syllable, not on the individual segments. The overall pitch movement over a longer utterance, for example, a sentence or a phrase, is what we refer to as intonation. Mr. Domako, is that correct?
Yes. So, yeah. So over a longer utterance, as is just said, sentence or clause or whatever, that is what we call intonation. But as is just explained, pitch over a syllable. Yes, pitch over. No. Variation of pitch over a syllable is what we call pitch. But when it is beyond one word and it goes to a sentence or a clause or whichever, then we will call it intonation.
So, for example, the example you gave us earlier on, Peter has gone. When you were giving us that example, our focus was on the final word.
Exactly.
But if we consider from the beginning to the end, there is pitch variation movement from the beginning to the very last end.
Yes.
And the whole pitch variation on that sentence is what we are referring to as intonation.
Exactly.
Thank you very much. Now, the concept of tone is linked to pitch variation. So here we are discussing two different suprasegmentals in relation to pitch. So if you have a word, you have a language like English, for example, you can always notice the pitch variations on longer sentences such as sentences and phrases and clauses. Yeah, and that is referred to as intonation. Now we are moving to another suprasegmental known as tones. And we are saying that the concept of tone is linked to pitch variations. For example, in our Ghanaian languages, a pitch variation on the same syllable can result in meaning change. So it therefore means that while intonation is pitch variation on longer utterances, tone is pitch variation on individual syllables. Is it correct to say that? Thank you. So in Ghanaian languages, for example, if you take Akan, you have words like papa, 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 meaning father. You have another word, papa, papa, meaning good. Then you have another papa, papa, meaning fun. Once again, you can see that the individual segments are the same in these three words. However, the pitch on the first syllable of the first word, papa, the pitch is low on the first syllable and high on the second syllable. I guess I'm correct.
Yes.
And that is giving us father. But when you come to the second word, the two syllables have high pitches, papa, and that means good. And when you come to the last word, the two syllables have low pitches, papa, meaning fun. It therefore means that the difference in meaning among the three words is due to the pitch variation and nothing else. All the other segments are the same.
Yes.
Okay. So the phenomenon by which meaning is distinguished by pitch variations on individual syllables is known as tone. So tone is the phenomenon in which meaning variation is determined by pitch differences. Whenever a pitch is phonemic, it is called tone. It's another way of saying that.
Yeah.
Whenever pitch is phonemic, it's called tone. So languages such as Akan, Ebe, Gan, and majority of the Ghanaian languages use pitch variation on individual syllables to distinguish meaning. And these languages are called tonal languages or tone languages. Is it okay to call them tone languages too?
Tone language.
Okay. So there are two types of tones in these tonal languages. We have what we call registered tones, and we also have contour tones. Registered tones and contour tones. Registered tones, this is also known as level tones. Registered tones are also called level tones. Okay, because the tone level stays the same from beginning to the end. This means if the syllable starts with a high tone, it will continue and end with a high tone. And if it starts with a low tone, it will continue and end with a low tone. Before I come to you, let us contrast it together with the contour tone. See, unlike the contour, the registered tones, the contour tones move from one pitch range to another within the same syllable, right? So a syllable may start with one tone level but end with another tone level. Then we say it is a contour tone. Contour tones are single tones with two tonal qualities or features. Mr. Domako, what can you tell us about registered tones versus contour tones?
Okay, thank you. Yes, as Mr. Podo has just explained, registered tone is one tone level that when you change, can change the meaning of a word. And as he said, it begins with a level. When it is high, then it has to end in the same level high. But contour tone, in a way, let me put it simply, it's a combination of two level tones on one syllable. Two different level tones on one syllable. So for instance, as he just showed us in the examples, one level tone could be a high tone, another could be a low tone. So we have a high tone, which is separate, and a low tone, which is also separate. Now, when the high and low combine on one syllable, that can bring a change in meaning. That is a contour tone. Yes, and when a low and high, or you begin with a low but you end up in a high, then that is called a contour tone. If you cast your minds back, when we were talking about vowels, there was what we call a simple vowel versus a diphthong. So we said a simple vowel is a vowel that begins with one quality and ends in the same quality. But diphthong begins in the quality but ends in another quality. So let's cast our minds back of the idea of the vowel, diphthong, to get the understanding of a contour versus level of or registered tone.
Thank you very much. You make things very, very simple. So even if we take registered tones or level tones, we also have types, isn't it? Yes. We have three different types of level tones, yes, or in some languages two. So we can limit ourselves to two, high tones and low tones. So in the Akan examples that we saw earlier on, we may say that we have high tones and we also have low tones. For example, papa, papa, pa. The first syllable has a low tone, and pa, the second syllable, has a high tone. The diacritic that indicates high tone is what we have here, and the second diacritic, they are in the brackets on the screen. As we can see, the second one is a low tone. So a high tone moves from left upward towards the right, acute accent. So then the second one will be grave accent. So it moves from left downwards to the right. But when you come to A language like Ewe. So we saw Akan or tree earlier on, papa, papa, papa. A language like Ewe, as you can see on the screen right now, you have Jo, 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 which means to leave. And then, so that has a high tone, and you have Jo, Jo, with a low tone, which means to fly. Jo, to leave. Jo, to fly. Then you have Ko, Ko, to carry something. And then Ko, Ko, to pour something, or water or liquid, any other form of liquid, Ko. Then Cho, to stand. Cho, to cut. So in this language, the pitch variation on the individual syllables is what is causing the difference in meaning, since all the basic segments remain the same throughout. Now we already talked about contour tones, and we say they start from one tone level and end with another tone level. One language that uses contour tone very much is Chinese. Even though we also have languages, Ghanaian languages that use contour tone. The examples we have here are from Chinese. We have ma, that is horse, and ma, that is hem, ma, that is hem, ma, that is horse, ma, that is hem. So by starting from high, from low tone and then ending with high tone, the meaning is different, and starting from high tone and ending with low tone, the meaning is also different. We hope you enjoyed this video, and we hope you are going to come back to us on our WhatsApp platforms with your questions and other concerns. We are always available to you on WhatsApp and on Facebook. Kindly tell your friends who are your mates in the class to join the class on Facebook. It's a closed group. Only people who are admitted into the group will see the materials that we share in the group. Any additional material that we think will help you understand the topic we have discussed today will be uploaded on Facebook for you. We thank you. Have a nice day, and keep practicing the social distancing. Don't go out, stay at home. If it is so important that you go out, please make sure you leave 6 feet radius between yourself and other people who are out there. The COVID-19 disease is very threatening. We want all of you to return to campus safely and soundly. God be with us all as we meet. Prof, do you have any message for them?
Let me also add my voice in thanking you for being there to listen to us, even though physically we are not able to meet due to the situation we find ourselves in. I hope you are enjoying the class. Please, let's continue to make our contributions. And now, even aside from the questions you may ask, you can also give us a feedback as to how we can improve in reaching you and ensuring that the knowledge we wanted to give you, you have it even remotely. So as he said, practice the WHO and Ghana Health precautionary measures they have given us. We wish to have every single soul that left here come back even healthier than you left. So keep safe wherever you are, and may God protect us all. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Prof.